The recent Dream cheating scandal has just gotten way worse. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically a couple days ago, some high-level parkour players noticed something insanely weird in Dream's MCC11 parkour run from many years ago, saying that Dream was most likely using a macro that jumped for him and made the parkour very easy. And very recently, Dream actually made a short responding to these allegations. But this response seemingly just made it worse because the parkour players accusing Dream said that this response doesn't prove much from a technical standpoint. And even YouTubers like Venom have come out publicly saying that Dream was probably cheating. But first, check out Dream's response and then I'll go over the new evidence the parkour players found.
This jump requires inhuman precision. Or does it? There's a block above your head, which means if you jump one tick too early, you bonk your head and you fall. And if you jump one tick too late, well, you also fall. So like Goldilocks, you have to jump just right in order to make the jump. A lot of people think doing that consistently is impossible, but as you can see, there's footage playing of me in the background with a hand cam hitting 50 in a row with my feet both on the desk, just to be silly. But how? I thought you had a random chance to fail based on tick timing. Well, you do. The further from perfect timing that you are, the higher the odds are that you miss. But hitting one tick jumps while stationary is a lot harder to time and massively increases your odds of missing due to randomness. This is the same exact reason why all parkour isn't completely random and you have control over hitting that 4-block jump. If you're a great parkour player and you feel like you can hit 4-block jumps 99.9% of the time, that's why. Therefore, trying to keep moving and getting a running start actually increases your accuracy rather than decreasing it, as long as you have some ticks of runtime before you jump. It's actually why when doing the final stage in Minecraft Championship, I run up the course instead of stopping and sneaking at every part, because despite what it might seem like, timing one key press based on visual cues and muscle memory, the spacebar, is a lot easier than just hoping that your timing is good enough to beat the randomness. You might not realize it, but you are micro-adjusting your timings to match the tick start time based on when you start moving, which helps you rely on your skill and takes out a lot of the randomness. And yes, that is me using my foot to press spacebar and hitting almost 50 perfect tick jumps in a row.
Now, after this response was made, a lot of Dream fans thought that this controversy is completely over, that Dream has proved his innocence and all that. But quite recently, a very high-level parkour player by the name of TruthXD had a lot to say about Dream's response. He said Dream posted a YouTube short doubling down, insisting that he's legit, basically saying that he's just consistent at tick timings. But here's the main problem with his argument. In the short, to show that he can do lots of perfect tick timings in a row, he does 50 millisecond 1-tick 3-block jumps. But this is a completely unfair comparison to MCC. Doing the exact same jump over and over again will give you a rhythm that allows you to be consistent. And down below you can see this guy doing a lot of perfect jumps, and he's basically saying that if you have a rhythm that makes you jump at the same time after each jump, it's way easier to be consistent at tick timings. He follows up by saying it's not unrealistic to have good tick timings, but it requires consistency, visual, and sometimes audio cues. I have done 1,000 triple neos in a row, which requires almost 1,200 perfect 1-tick taps, but it's the same jump over and over again with visual and audio cues. He then says Dream hits perfect last tick timings on different jumps with no consistent setup, no visual cues, and no audio cues. Most apparent when he exits blockages when doing neos, which are 1-tick lenient. Impossible to get consistent at that because there's no cue for if you will exit the blockage. And he links a 26-second video where Dream does tick perfect jumps with no setup, no audio cues, and no consistency. You can see that he's just ripping it, holding W, and the macro is probably jumping for him, which this guy is insinuating. And he then follows up again, saying setups are very important for parkour, and the way Dream played is not how any parkour player plays. Compare Fruitberry Stage 8-1 to Dream's. Fruit utilizes a setup to ensure making it, but Dream YOLOs, basically gambling exiting the blockage, and somehow consistently does it. And what he's basically referring to is Dream doing the exact same thing Fruit is doing here, but instead Dream just absolutely YOLOs it, basically gambling the entire run, and on top of that having absolutely no sound of him pressing space at any point, which we will get to a bit later. This whole section by Truth basically proved that Dream's response doesn't really have any substance to it, because Dream wasn't simply accused of doing tick perfect jumps that are all the same, that have a rhythm that you can easily get used to. He basically says that there's a lot of video evidence of Dream doing tick perfect jumps with absolutely no setup, no consistency, just basically ripping it, which again isn't the way any professional parkour player plays. That's why when this footage came to light 6 years later, most very good parkour players are basically just outright saying that Dream cheats. But we haven't even gotten to the craziest part of them all. This is what Venom said on Twitter very recently. I wasn't convinced enough at first, even though making all but one of his 200 tick perfect jumps during MCC11 did go a long way in convincing me, but then I thought to check for spacebar audio from his MCC11 run. His teammates' audio audio made it pretty hard to tell, but then I found this. And it's a tweet from a random Twitter user saying, more evidence of Dream cheating / toggling macros. Clips taken from Dream's unlisted PKW video. Only editing done was captions plus audio amplification, and slight suppression for stage completion SFX for your earbuds. So take a look at the video this person made, because this is starting to get really weird. Now, if you ask me, this is insanely weird. At the parkour parts that Dream is most suspicious at, there can be absolutely no spacebar heard, which compared to other parts that Dream doesn't need a macro for, is not really the case. So this is a whole new perspective and a whole lot of new evidence that a lot of these players have presented so far. And then Ant Venom followed up by saying this. Also, if you mean to tell me that his spacebar taps are absolutely silent during all the salmon ladders, but then it's mysteriously audible as he climbs the final steps, I've got some snake oil to sell you. And what he's referring to is this clip. I mean, yeah, as you can hear, there was absolutely no audio on the salmon jumps, but then when Dream finishes it and is not required to have a macro on, you can hear him climb the ladders by pressing his spacebar and other keys much more lighter than you would be required to do the salmon jumps. And even Sandwich Lord himself, which was the guy accusing Dream in the first place, had a new response. He said, "This is very telling of a toggleable macro. The inaudible spacebar during sections where timing is most relevant alongside positioning really not mattering is very strange. Here is my run as a reference example of what should be getting heard." And in this example, he basically puts on the same noise suppression that Dream had, and he does the exact same parkour that Dream is accused of faking, but as an example, he actually clicks his spacebar when he's required to jump, showing how much louder these timing sections are required to be clicked to hit the perfect timing, which is not heard anywhere in the Dream clips. He seemingly just doesn't even hit his spacebar at all because it's completely silent. And yeah, the fact that you couldn't hear anything when Dream was doing the salmon jumps is really, really telling. And for the people saying that his noise suppression might have cut out the space bars or something, you know, that would be a valid argument if only seconds later you couldn't hear Dream's actual keyboard and normal keys being pressed. But in most of these clips, when Dream does all the hard sections of the parkour, you legitimately can't hear anything, which would make sense if he was using a macro. All you need to basically do is just hold down W and the jumps will be done by themselves, meaning that he doesn't need to press spacebar at all. So even from the audio cues, it matches up with him using a macro. It's not only just him doing tick perfect jumps anymore, there's another layer to the evidence. But yeah, this is basically all the new evidence that was released against Dream, and as you might realize by this point, Dream's new short, which was meant to be a response, doesn't really hold any ground anymore. But yeah, tell me what you guys think.